So, Vivek, would you take it
Yeah,
forward?
I'll take it forward. So the first question in is about the dependencies on China, with vis-a-vis tech components, etc. Given the erosion of trust, how do you see that evolving? What are your views on that?
So excellent question. Everyone can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So excellent question. And many companies, many startups are facing this problem. Uh, so there are two issues here. One is the current supply, and current supply is hurt, but the good news is China is coming back, and hopefully your supply is restored, hopefully soon. But the bigger question is, your total dependence on China is not a great thing. So you need to create a long-term second source in India, and you will see massive number of companies doing it. You will also see large multinationals. We were totally relying on China as a single source. We'll create a second source in India. And so India's manufacturing ecosystem will improve quite a bit over the next year or so. So my suggestion to startups is to also create a second supply chain within India.
The next question is about how do you see e-commerce evolving in the next couple of quarters as this wears on is a question.
A wonderful time for e-commerce. I think every e-commerce company today is only limited by the logistics of delivering you what you need. They can have as many orders as they can process, really. But this lockdown, etc., will slowly change and relax. So e-commerce company it will do very well. Anything online, like I said, will do very well. Having said that, your value proposition has to be strong. You cannot be 11th dry cleaning company online. You cannot be, those kind of very low value proposition companies, which may do well even in short term, will not be actually doing well long term. So e-commerce, very good time. Make sure your value proposition is strong. And this just takes the e-commerce to the next orbit, and better opportunities will open up there.
I think you've covered a bit of this already, but the question is, what kind of startup ideas will thrive in the current market situation?
I have already covered that the sectors that will not get affected, anything online, health tech, fintech that can be done online, whether it's payment or it is robo financing or some kind of financial portfolio management, or for corporations, many fintech products that are needed. So anything that is in one line, anything that is a must rather than a wish by your customer segment is what you should focus on.
Another one is, what is your advice to team members as to how to stay motivated? Everyone is fearing losing their jobs at this point of time.
And that also I covered quite a bit. This is really the CEO and leadership team's job. And that is why I said that if you don't communicate, they will assume the worst. So it is better to create a new plan and communicate with them transparently, discuss your challenges also transparently, and hopefully that way you create trust. So communicate, be transparent, and create trust. And also when your relationship and empathy has to show up. So when you call them, don't just ask them, your work related questions, ask them how their children and family is doing, and those kind of things becomes much more important in this very difficult environment.
One more is about, so this I think is an interesting question. It's about the service industry. What do you think is going to be the situation for the service industry, and what would be your suggestions going forward for them?
So if you are thinking about service industry in terms of TCS, Infosys, Wipros, etc., they will definitely take a hit in terms of business and contract that will be renegotiated and things like that. So their growth will slow down. They may also go through some financial restructuring and so on. If you are talking about startups in service industry, so again, it depends really on your value proposition. What services are you providing? Are they must or they wish? Are they solving a big problem or are they solving a small problem? So those basic questions you have to answer. But as a service, online service, for example, right? Payments, for example. What is payment? Online service. Telemedicine, what is that? Online doctor appointment, and etc. So these services will continue to do well, and you make sure you are in the right segment, in the right industry, and solving a problem that is real and important and a must.
Do you expect the recruitment industry to dry up, given the current scenario where, firms are not looking at recruiting at this time?
Definitely a big slowdown in recruitment. So the large scale recruitment will stop, and will take time to catch up. The selected senior positions, critical positions, I expect to remain open, but not in the next month or two. It will take some time for people to replan their business, reimagine their business, and then see what they actually need. Even before they go to meet, they will try to figure out how can they avoid hiring a new person? Can anyone in the current team do that job, etc. When none of these options work and this position is critical, the recruitment will be open for them. But as I said, it will be less in numbers, more selective, and very critical recruitment for the next few months.
So you had mentioned that, the time to act is now. You can't wait till the lockdown gets over and so on. But for services, again, it's very face-to-face sales. So do you have any suggestions on sales strategy for such businesses?
So like I said, you have to plan now. That doesn't mean you can serve your customers for next 2 weeks or not. I do not know. That depends on the business. But what stops you from planning, right? So in many of the companies that I have involved with, for example, and without taking names, I have asked the founders to assume 0 sales in the next 2 quarters. It depends, of course, on your product and service and so on. But even that kind of drastic assumption you may have to make depending on the business you have. So plan now. I'm not saying execute your plan now. Plan right now, know what you have in your hand, and then take it forward.
So another question is on profitability. You had mentioned that instead of just focusing on growth, profitability, cash flows, those things will come under question. So the question is, are growth-based companies going to be completely hit? Is it going to be only about profitability going forward?
No. By no means, no. If you have a strong value proposition, which is showing customer traction and exceptional company category it comes in, so that you can raise money that is needed for growth, go for it. But don't hope. Make sure your assumptions are based on reality and you truly believe that your customer pipeline is strong and you can actually execute. Make sure your solution fits into a must category, not wish category. Make sure your value proposition is very, very strong. Make sure you can raise money for growth. If all of those line up, go for growth.
Another question is, how do you see non-tech companies, consumer product companies, or for example, sustainable fashion apparel companies, how do you see them panning out over the next year or so? Is it going to be a complete hit, or would they have opportunities?
No, there'll be always opportunities, right? They have to be intelligent about it, right? Certain segments will not get much affected. The essential services part, you need medicine, you need food, you need all that, right? That is not going to change. But the dress you are going to buy, the suit you are going to take, the fashion accessories that you wanted to have, you may not want that at this point. At least a large segment will say that, look, I can postpone this. Weddings may get postponed. So in India, a very large funding is tied to actually weddings. Well, they may not happen for foreseeable future. So depending on the segment you are in, you need to, that's exactly my point, reassess, imagine your business and see what you can do to make this all work for you.
Yeah, the next question is about manufacturing investments from the United States. Do you see them moving from China towards India?
Not as a primary source, because India is not ready for primary source. The companies, multinationals that actually already are present in India for manufacturing have very small part of manufacturing in India to make in India and to show that they are investing in India. India's infrastructure is not ready for large scale manufacturing. Our bureaucratic system is not ready for large scale manufacturing. So I do not see the manufacturing in one step to move to India. I see a second source kind of manufacturing opportunity in the next year or two. And if India can deliver the goods, the government, the people, the local governments, all of these can deliver the goods, and these companies find that their experience of this second source is very good, I see that they can move to primary source. But I don't see that. I think we should have to take advantage and get ready for becoming their second source at this point.
You'd spoken about innovation. So there's a question on innovating for the gaps that are currently emerging. For example, personal protective equipment or ventilators. There are gaps there so far as the requirement is concerned. Do you think it would be an opportunity worth pursuing?
Well, these are very short-term opportunities, right? So you cannot build a company based on short-term opportunity. Your company has to be built on long-term opportunity. Now, if you were making, you saw Anand Mahindra very graciously said, we will not make cars, we will make ventilators. You saw Elon Musk do that. That you can do. You can reconfigure whatever you are doing to take advantage of short-term opportunities. But you cannot build a long-term business on a short-term opportunity.
So, any thoughts on the real estate segment? There are 3-4 people that have asked the question.
I'm not a real estate guy, but given that the rents will drop, given that every landlord has to be flexible to actually accommodate whatever company they are renting to, whatever people they are renting to, all of this, in my opinion, and this is not the time that a young professional couple will be planning to buy a house. They don't know how their job will pan out. They don't know all these things. So I don't see as a sector very bullish on real estate, but specific opportunities could be very interesting. So as a broad sector, I don't see an opportunity. I know I saw some emails that China will move large scale manufacturing to India, and so the real estate will come in very huge demand. And people from US and Western Europe will start moving back to India in very large numbers. None of that is going to happen, guys.
It's an interesting question. Do you expect a huge change in customer behavior post-lockdown?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They will go towards essential. That's where my point comes. Do you provide a service or a product that is must, or it's a wish? So if your product improves productivity by 10%, they may not be thrilled about it. But if you are solving a problem of security or collaboration or what is needed, very important. So you need to keep these things in mind.
Do you think products for rural India would be affected? So they're talking about solar products and stuff like that. Do you think it's something worth pursuing?
The funding will slow down quite a bit. The value proposition is still strong, but the funding sources will be sort of tough to get. So that is the challenge. So anybody doing that, my suggestion is to line up your funding, even if you had assumed and even if you had partnered with very strong financial companies, look at those assumptions. And if you have a good partnership, then no problem. These things will be needed tomorrow. No question on that.
How do you think freelance segment would be affected? Do you think more companies would move towards freelancers in the tech sector? Do you think, especially since work from home has become so easy, do you think there's going to be any change in that?
It will. So depending on the roles and responsibilities, certain jobs that can be outsourced at this point will be outsourced. So freelancers will have good time there. Certain jobs which cannot be outsourced easily, they're freelancers, because every extra dollar companies will try to save. So they are not going to hire consultants easily at this point. But if certain function can be outsourced, they would love that opportunity to save cost.
Understood. And for companies that are working on digital media, digital content, you had mentioned, media might be an interesting area to look at. What do you think happening? What do you see happening in that space?
Yeah, digital marketing becomes even more important now. Digital even sales can become very, very important now. So I think these are great opportunities, but your current product may not meet this segment. So you need to tweak your product where your customers can take advantage of these.
One on telemedicine. Do you think telemedicine is going to become the in thing after the lockdown once this is passed? Like right now, it's forced upon us. But what do you think?
Again, depends on, as a large segment, the answer is no. Once this lockdown and these things are over, people would again want to touch and feel their doctors. However, it will be much better than what it was 1 month back. So will every appointment after 2 months will be a telemedicine appointment? No. Again, probably 90% will be face-to-face. But as people are exposed to this now, many of them will get comfortable. And for many of their requirements, they will prefer to actually use telemedicine. So better than before, but don't assume that everyone will be doing telemedicine after the lockdown.
And another one on stock markets. Do you think it is going to be worth pursuing the stock market post lockdown? How do you see the dynamics playing out?
So no advice on stocks here, guys. What can I tell you? I can tell you that the world will be in a deep economic crisis, and so coronavirus itself will taper out at some point. Do we know the worst case situations in the world on coronavirus? No, at this point we do not know. Things can get a lot worse, and things can taper out. So at this point, the uncertainty is very high on coronavirus, and people are actually not looking at economy beyond that at this point. Once this coronavirus situation comes in control, I think people will start saying, oh, what has happened to my business? What is happening to economy? Already there are talks that most of the countries in the world will be in a recession, etc., etc. So I can't tell you what to do with in terms of your buying and selling pattern. All I can tell you is make sure some money you have for your safety requirements for quite some time. And secondly, if you are investing, invest it for a long term, and long term is not 1 year or 2 years. A long term could be 5 to 10 years. If you then have money available and want to take advantage of this opportunity, I think you can. But make sure you are not weak at heart. If it drops a further 20%, market drops, you can take that shock. Those things, if you are you can manage, then I think go ahead and do what you need to do.
So we have just a few more questions quickly. We'll get through them. So there was a huge push being made by the Indian government towards electric vehicles previously, and a lot of policy initiatives were undertaken. Do you think we will continue down that curve after this this pandemic?
So that will continue. There may be a small bump here, but it will continue over a long period of time. But the adoption from companies and people might take a hit because the oil has become so cheap. So the value proposition that you had when oil was 3 times more expensive may not be a good enough selling proposition. So make sure your value proposition is strong. And if that is the case, then it will definitely be that situation. You can take advantage.
Another question on the agriculture sector. Do you think there's going to be a huge hit in the agriculture sector post lockdown?
So again, the top tier farmers may become your segment for the next foreseeable future. So sell the solutions that are required by the top tier farmers, large farmers. The bottom of the pyramid will be hurt very badly, and it will hurt them mentally also quite badly. So they will take some time to come back, and that segment is not the right segment to focus on.
One more question is on companies such as Urban Clap, Housejoy, etc., who actually have to go to your house and service you in terms of cleaning your house or whatever that might be. Do you think a business of that nature would not be able to thrive post lockdown?
Post lockdown, it will, right? The problems haven't gone away. But right now, nobody wants a stranger to come to their house and touch their kitchen and so on. So, or to come and clean their house at this point. They don't want three strangers to walk in and clean their house. We don't know what their infection level is. We don't know where they live and so on. So I think those services will be required, but after the lockdown or partial lockdown, whatever may follow. But once the lockdown and this problem is in control, I think those services will be needed, and for some time they may see a peak actually. So no need to dishearten there, but plan appropriately.
One other question is about agility of decision making. Do you have any tips that you have so far as decision making agility is concerned, given how fast the situation is evolving externally?
Yeah, I think you assume the worst, and then make your decisions accordingly. After 2 weeks, if that worst scenario is not panning out as bad, you replan. So sitting for 2 weeks and not making any decision is not the answer. Making a decision with the information you have and assuming worse than that might happen is the right way to make the decision. And you don't have to be scared, but you need to be intelligent, right? Now, I'll tell you, I have been interacting with founders over the last 2 weeks, and I have asked them to replan their business and so on, come back. Almost all have come back with their worst case plan is the best plan that looks to me as viable. Okay, so they have to really assume that bad things can happen and plan based on that, and then replan after week, after 2 weeks. Nobody is asking them not to change their decision. If they have made a decision that needs to be changed, change it in 2 weeks. But take the assumptions today, take a picture today, based on that picture, discuss and make your decisions. In 1 week, in 2 weeks, you challenge those assumptions again. If something needs to be changed, change it. So, but don't be paralyzed.
Post 2008, there was a huge amount of...
Vivek, just give me 1 second.
Sure.
So, Dr. Mansingh, it's 12:30 and there are questions coming in. Would you want to take it a few more minutes, or do you want...
Yes. Let's take it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Post 2008 crisis, there was anger against the banks, and that sort of led to the rise of cryptocurrencies at the time. Do you see any trend of that nature emerging from this?
I mean, there is anger against China, for example, very common right now, right? People are very angry, and to certain extent, rightly so. Not for creating the coronavirus and so on, that I don't know, that only time will tell, but not disclosing to the world at the first opportunity is definitely a very serious mistake by China, and we should be angry with that, right? So that kind of anger is okay, but which segment will take off because of your anger, I honestly do not know. This will also subside with things improving. So I don't think anger should be your strategy. And I don't think, by the way, that cryptocurrencies came because of anger with business. I think it is following its own evolution path, and it will be a big part of economy in due course of time. There are some big questions to be answered on cryptocurrency. Once those are addressed, it will become mainstream. But it was not because people were angry with banks. In banking crisis, several large financial institutions made serious judgment mistakes where other people's money was affected. That kind of anger is fair. So if your financial institution has jeopardized your money by doing some stupid decisions, you can be angry. But again, that is very case specific. In terms of industry, no, I don't think you can take advantage of anger and build a long-term opportunity for yourself.
There's one that is repeatedly coming, which is about a legal tech startup, and they want to know if you see that emerging in a big way, legal tech.
Yeah, I see legal tech emerging anyways, whether this situation comes or not. I see in the due course of time, I see 50%, if not 70% of the legal tasks that are being done by humans today will actually move to automation and so on. So I see that opportunity anyways. It has nothing to do with coronavirus or slow down. The economic numbers can become important. The amount of money they were spending on legal things will become important. So they will be more open to using some tools that they were not open to earlier, and saying that, hey, contract, for example, reviews can be done by tools. I would rather do that than pay my lawyer gazillion dollars to actually do it. So those kind of opportunities will be short term, but long term, I am bullish on the sector anyways. But make sure you are not a Me Too 101st company in that sector. Make sure you are your value proposition can stand the test of time.
So two more questions before we end this. One is on health tech opportunities in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Do you see that emerging after this?
Health tech will continue to grow. Again, it's telemedicine that will continue to slowly grow even in the second tier cities, I would say. And hospitals, etc., are always interested in optimizing their cost. So your value proposition doesn't change there. Anything you can provide in some terms of software or hardware that reduces their cost and improves their patient experience, that's always a hot area. It will not change by this short-term opportunity.
One more is on retail. How long do you think retail would take to get back on its feet after the lockdown?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So again, it depends on you are in must category or which category. So I don't see people walking around in malls and buying, the clothes that they don't need right now at this point. I don't see them buying fashion accessories and all, not in large numbers, maybe small segment that is not affected by this. So again, that is not going to sort of take off. But somebody who was building a house will continue to build his house. Construction industry will come back. The bridges and the roads will continue to be built. Hospitals will continue to be built. Manufacturing will see a new, somewhat of a growth, not as a replacement, but as a second source, like I talked about it. So depending on your segment, right? Hardware supplies, I need some hardware supplies. I'm just waiting for lockdown to be over. Food, all essentials, those retails will come back very, very quickly. But I do not know how lockdown will work out. I see total lockdown, then partial lockdown, and then slowly getting into normal depending on the situation. How long can it take? I do not know. I wish it is just probably not more than next 45 days to 2 months. But if it continues, I wouldn't be surprised.
There are 3 or 4 people who have posted the same question, which is about mobile gaming and sports. How do you see that sector playing out?
Very, very strong because of the exposure that people have got. The young people who were not playing those games online earlier have seen these now in this environment, working, being in home and so on. So I see a strong need for that. And these people who have gotten hooked to these games are not going to give up after lockdown is open. So I see so first I see a long-term growth opportunity there anyways, but that is enhanced by this short-term opportunity. But again, make sure it's not a Me Too game. Make sure it can sustain the value proposition test of time. Make sure there is IP involved, and it has a long-term play.
So after 9/11, we saw a huge strengthening of security across every airport in the world. In a similar way, after this, perhaps uh, aviation, and in aviation, every plane would have to be cleaned every time it lands or whatever, or scrubbed clean. Do you see opportunities emerging there?
I do short-term opportunities. I don't think it is sustainable to, in the long run, to keep cleaning all the planes and have these social distancing in the queues of airports. All that is not going to happen. So once this virus is not going to be there forever, guys. Once it settles down, I think we will go back to, maybe some small things will change, but don't build your company on very short-term opportunities.
Okay, so last question, I'll end it with this. Do you think fitness industry is discretionary spend or necessary spend?
Fitness industry is never discretionary, but a lot of people always think that it is discretionary. But in the short term, I mean, do I want to go at a fitness club right now? No chance. Even after the lockdown opens. So if you have gyms, etc., people will take time to come there. But on the other hand, I'm advising one company that is doing the sports, yoga, etc., for school children in the apartment complexes by making sure that these services can be availed within the apartment complexes. And they were providing services in the apartment complexes earlier. And again, they are hit by this lockdown and all, and they are going full steam on digital side. So yoga can be taught online, exercise can be done online. So those kind of opportunities will come. But if you are talking about gym as such, I think it will take some time before people get back there. But they will. This problem will go away and people will go back to gyms.
Srini, I have a question. With 15 years of our co-founding, right? I always get the last say, right? So my question to you, being last, but a very critical one and the least spoken about in these difficult times, is a founder's mental state of mind, the mental health. The reason I'm speaking about this is, one, I've gone through a lot of depression myself. And in the last 15 days, I have had episodes where in the middle of the night around 2 o'clock, I've received founders of early stage, matured startup founders in our community and network call me up like literally in tears saying, I don't seem to figure out. And at that point, I'm left with no choice but to just say, okay, stay calm and, breathe and do this. So what would you give us some, inputs on founders' mental state at this point?
Excellent question. I covered some of it earlier, but I think it's very, very important. And a lot of startup founders. So if India has 30,000 startups, I see a lot of them will actually go under in the next 12 to 18 months. So it will be hard on founders, right? So what do, right? Number one, plan. Take your old plan, throw it away, replan, and figure out where you stand. Make decisions based on that and see what is the right thing to do. If you see hope in your current new plan, my suggestion is you start acting with that. I also strongly suggest go to a trusted partner, whether it is your VC, whether it is your mentor, and they will provide you some new way to think about these challenges. And you will have another person, a trusted partner, who can give you the advice on what to do. Now, having said all that, mental toughness has to be managed by you yourself. So I think you need to keep in mind why you established this business. Whenever I interact with a founder, I always ask, why are you doing this? And if the only reason is I want to make a lot of money, that business most likely is not going to succeed. So you need to go back to the root cause of why you wanted to do what you wanted to do, but intelligently see what you are doing is that relevant to people, your customers in the new environment. Make the right decisions. If you can go forward and use your mentors, use your advisors, use your partners, and take the business forward. Make tough decisions and take it forward. If the business is looking like it cannot survive next 12 months or whatever time period, and the value proposition has become weaker, first talk to your trusted partners. If after talking to them, all of you believe that this is not something that can survive, my suggestion is make a quick decision. Before that, you might want to even see if you can refocus, but even that takes time and money and so on. But if the writing on the wall is that it will not survive the next 12 months and is based on the decent assumptions and advice of some sane people who have been there and done that, you may have to make a tough choice. That doesn't mean your life is over. That means you need to restart. And you may want to do two things. To a lot of founders who have had bad start, I have advised that they go back to work for a year or two, because the founders fatigue is very, very big issue emotionally as well as otherwise. So they may choose to go and work for a couple of years and then come back to entrepreneurship if they are passionate about it, or take a different path and say that, well, entrepreneurship is not for me. So all these tough decisions may have to be made. That's why I'm saying a mentor is important. Your partners, whether they are VCs or angel investors, but talk to people who are knowledgeable, people who have seen this before, so they are not unnecessarily scaring you. But on the other hand, they have to have guts to tell you the truth. They should not be just telling you what you want to hear. So a lot of sort of advice I have given. There's no sort of cut and paste thing I can tell you that do these three things. But if I have to, I'll say number one, replan your business. Talk to your trusted advisors and decide which path you want to take.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really, really helpful. And I know, thank you so much, Srini, for taking the questions. There are still more questions coming in. What we would do is I would copy paste as many questions we've left out, if we've left out any, and mail it to you, sir. And you would definitely send it across. As always, your time with us is so precious for all of us, and we really appreciate, and we would love to see more of you with Startup Club and with all the community members of us. We had a total of 100 plus attendees. We totally value every second and every word said by you. Thank you so much, sir.
So thank you guys, all the people who have joined. I want to thank them for their time. These are difficult times. In the end, I will leave it with optimism. I'm actually not seeing the world to end. I'm seeing a new world where hopefully the people will be better prepared. I see no lack of opportunity. Your current business may go under or do well. I do not know. That depends on your specific situation. But entrepreneurship is not dead. The startups will not be dead. IP creation will not be dead. New tools, new technologies, new businesses, new services will be required in the new world. So be optimistic about all this. This will pass and we'll have a bright world and you will be able to take advantage of it just like you have in the past. So all the best to each one of you, and thanks again for joining.